Today on Navigating Retirement, we're going to talk about business succession planning. When's the best time to hand over the reins? Who do you hand them to, or do you just sell the business outright? And Jeff, the first thing you really need is a plan.
Exactly. And
when do you do that?
The question is, when should you start planning? Typically, they advise you should build a business with that in mind in the first place. But that not being the case for a lot of folks, I think you need to plan early, and the earlier the better.
A lot of people, when they start a business, are focused on getting it off the ground first, right?
Exactly. And one of the problems with waiting too late is if you plan early, you have a lot of options, and the closer you get to that end date, potentially the less options you have open to you.
Life happens, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, sometimes they're forced to retire and due to health reasons or whatever, and it's kind of nice to have something in place so that when you're ready to pull the plug, you're okay. And the economy can have a big effect on it too, right? Businesses go through a state. Yeah, that's right. So I had a client about 5 years ago came and said, "Hey Dave, I'd like to retire," right? And I think the first place we started was just trying to organize his affairs, but then figuring out who was going to buy his business. Luckily, he had a son that was in the business. But that took some convincing, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the key, isn't it? A lot of times. I mean, do your kids want to do this?
Yeah, that's right.
In farming, people are finding they don't want to do it, right?
It's a big commitment, right? And and doing that too, you've got to figure out financing. I mean, that's another challenge. Like, can you get financing, and do they have the skills? And they need time to be groomed and trained and all these sorts of things to be able to deal with. Owning a
Jeff,
business.
The mom and dad, whoever owns the business, do they actually retire? And if they're handing it over to the kids, I mean, they're probably still have their hands in there, right?
I was just thinking as you were talking, we have a client who built a business. The daughter and the son were very excited about taking part in that business. They became partners, and after a few years decided that wasn't what they wanted to do. And all of a sudden, mom and dad are stepping back into the business because it's...
I got a good story for you. Actually,
okay. Personal story?
Personal. This is a family story. So our family had a car dealership, and my grandfather started in the 1920s, and it lasted 62 years. So they ended up selling it in the 80s finally, but. The deal was in the 50s, I think my grandfather was 55 or something like that.
The golden age of automobiles.
That's right.
Yeah.
There you go. Freedom 55, right? So anyway, what happened was the deal he made with his three sons was for them to take over the business and equal partnership. Yeah. And he would be paid an income for life. And he went off. Yeah, he went off and developed a hunting and fishing camp. So he went and lived his vision and left it. No, he was in there half time, right? So trying to control the business and everything. But I think at the end of the day, when it came to the point that my father and his brothers were going to sell it in the 80s, my father did ask me, "Do you want to be involved in it?" And I think secretly he probably didn't want me to be involved in it. And honestly, I didn't. I just went and pursued my own thing. Therefore, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's why you're here. And hence, into this business. And that's the thing is, if the kids aren't interested, then what are your next options? I mean, you could sell it outright to a stranger.
Yeah, typically you could go outside of the business and find somebody who wants to acquire that type of business. There may be management or a key employee in your business who has been there all the way, and they as well are interested in taking it over.
Actually, a good place to start on the process is really understanding what the vision is, and the vision starts with the family, right? There's a key stakeholder. So the vision starts with the family. You've got the shareholders as another key stakeholder, and management team. So you want to make sure you understand each of their visions.
Yeah. Is another option just to close the business entirely?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sell everything off? Some businesses are made up of the business person. That is the business, and often there isn't a market for it. It's just wind it up and call it a day.
I had a client that did exactly that. So, in step 2 in our process is really identifying a successor. So, family would be one choice, obviously. I'll just recap what we were talking about. Transferring the ownership, outside of the business, or doing a management buyout, or just winding it up and saying, if there's no value in it, if you are the business, that's one of the problems when you are planning the growth of your business. You want to be cognizant of, the fact that it could run without you.
Yeah. And Jeff, what are some of the elements of this business wind up or plan or succession?
Some of the elements are, in no particular order, valuing the business, understanding what the business is worth, understanding the timing of the process, because you don't want to be entirely beholden to economic cycles, and you want to be able to have that out.
You want to sell at the top if you can, I guess, but that's
right.
Business
One of them is business maximization strategies.
Sure.
So you want to have a discussion about distribution of ownership, key shareholder agreements, key roles for employees, right? What role they're going to play in it. Tie in your personal retirement and estate planning issues into this. And you want to have we recommend having a roadmap so that it actually outlines the steps and the timing of these things taking place over a period of time. So,
and what is the process for the financials coming into the person retiring? If they hand it over to their son, for example, are they getting paid a salary like you mentioned earlier, or do they buy them out? I mean, how are they going to enjoy their retirement?
Well, I think that in part depends on the structure of the business too, because you've got tax implications of making certain decisions. Often, I guess in the perfect world, you get paid up front, take your money, and plan your own life. But that's rarely the case.
That's step 4 in the process, is integrating your own personal planning into this. So what we do, we have a process we use, and the first is you get your retirability score, and then we understand what the vision is of the individual, the personal vision. And then we build a plan, and that's all about organizing their affairs in a way that speaks to them, and so that they have more confidence as they step into retirement. Then we build a roadmap that generally is 2 years long, and then the 5th component of it is going through a navigating retirement process to outline all the different areas and make sure they're fully aware, and maybe change the way they look at their retirement. And then the last thing is really about increasing their certainty, so they have confidence as they step into retirement and they've got all their pieces. Because when you go in, you think of your biggest asset being your business, and everything's tied up in that. Well, how do you translate that into an income?
Because it's a lot different for that guy than it is for, say, an employee who's maybe getting a pension plan, for example.
That's right. And we'd recommend they diversify outside of their business, so that they don't have everything tied up in their business.
I think one piece that we haven't talked about is in this whole process is having a contingency plan, because
a plan B.
Plan B. Life happens, and it's whether the person you were going to sell it to. I mean, let's say you get right down to the wire and they can't put together the financing. All of a sudden, you got to back it up, or the people that were going to take over the business don't want to. So as a business owner, you've got to protect that asset and have a contingency plan in place for those kind of things.
Or you've got to have some insurance in place for death or disability or something to that effect, right? Because that can throw everything in the loop.
Would they then say they get a big chunk of change for their business? Did they get an annuity type thing, or is that how it generally works? Or
well, there's different ways. I think actually one of the things that a lot of times somebody that has an operating company will end up flowing that money and crystallizing it and flowing it into a holding company. So they separate it from the operating company. And
tax advantages for you?
Well, there can be. Generally, that flows over, tax free as a dividend. However, if you want to get your money out of the company, out of the holding company as an income, it does allow you some flexibility, along with RRSPs and pensions and all those other sorts of things, so that you have another income stream and maybe a potential way to reduce taxes. Because there's lots of different things business owners can do.
And if they have any questions, Jeff, where do they go if they want to talk to you guys?
Yourlifeyourplan.ca.